welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand, co-owner of the company Horns of Odin, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Mathias Nordvig.
Hello, everyone. Now we have a very special guest this time. We have Stine Sandnes. Stine is from Norway. She runs the handle on Instagram, Helheimen, where she is posting a lot of really cool pictures of her art, basically the different kinds of like conceptual pictures that she takes of Norwegian landscape, Iceland, inspired by folklore and mythology from Scandinavia, of course. And aside from that, Stine, you also have an MA in sociology, and you're currently doing is it a full MA in Scandinavian language and literatures?
I'm not sure yet, actually.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do the bachelor's, and then I'll see where it's where life is at when I'm done.
Right.
But
yeah.
I might.
It sounds really cool. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's really, really cool to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, I mean, whereabouts in the world are you? How are things where you are at the minute? Because we just got put in another national lockdown, which is always fun. Which is one reason why I'll probably be really grumpy today, because the gyms are closed.
Yeah, it's the same here. I don't know about the gyms, but alcohol is not it's not allowed to sell like in pubs and stuff.
Oh, okay. Can you buy it from like a regular shop, I guess?
Yeah, so the lines are really long now.
Of course they are. It's not just us Brits who like to drink.
Yeah, they are really long. And it will probably be like that for at least 2 weeks. Things are getting pretty strict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just what they've done to us. That we've just gone into a national lockdown with no determined end. It's kind of at least February, I think. It's frustrating to say the least.
Yeah, definitely.
Huh. Wow. I mean, we are just opening up again over here.
Oh.
It's not that the numbers are down or anything. We just loosened the restrictions.
Yeah.
Tired.
It just feels like the whole world's falling apart. But that does fit the episode today, where, you know, we're going to talk about all things underworldy and hell. And we probably should have saved this for Halloween if we were a little bit more organized, but, you know.
Yeah, I can come back on Halloween as well. We can do more scary stuff.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. I would say before we jump into the episode, I guess we have to give a special mention to a little cartoon that popped up just before we started the episode, which was probably has made my day. I was having a poor day until I saw this, and it really cheered me up. Mathias, have you had a chance to look at it?
Oh yeah, I have. I love it. I already reposted it on my story on Instagram.
Yeah. So for anybody that wants to go and check it out, it's by a girl who supports us on Patreon. Her Instagram handle is The Storyteller's Journal, and it's just a little comic strip of me and Mathias in our usual way. You've got me. Can I say, you know? I guess it's. Do you want to do you, Mathias, and I'll do me, and we can run through it?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so it goes. So what can you tell us about the Vikings?
Well, it's complicated. Where shall I start?
Okay, how about Viking women?
Yeah, it's complicated.
What about Viking tattoos?
That's also complicated.
Mathias, please tell me they're actually real, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there you go. It's a little comic strip, and like I say, that definitely put a smile on my face today.
Totally made my day.
It's a really good one. I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts, so I mean it's pretty like spot on, isn't it?
It is quite fitting. Yeah. It seemed to sum it up in 8 boxes. It sums up the podcast perfectly.
Yeah, it's really cool. Great job.
So should we jump into the podcast as a whole? I mean, let's start with your Instagram page. I think is a good place to start. Do you do all the photography yourself, or is it a case of getting other people in? How does that work?
Yeah, I both. I usually have most of the concepts myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I usually have, or sometimes have my brother to help out, and or other family members who, they think it's fun to help out, I think. But some of them are also done by me. But it's a bit more work. So, but I'm usually one doing the planning of all the concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So
you
it
just
kind
come
of
up
feels
with
like mine.
Yeah, so you come up with the ideas, and then you're kind of the overlord who puts it all together.
Yeah, exactly. And then I do the editing, and I mean, but I also do like self portraits. But there's usually a lot of running back and forward with like putting up the camera and then pressing play,
Yeah.
and then I run in front of the camera. And
I think that kind of breaks the mystique of some of the pictures because they're very quite harrowing. Some of them.
yeah, thank you.
That's the aim.
Yeah, that is the aim. Yeah, definitely.
So, what made you go down that kind of route of very kind of dark? Twisted's not the right word, I don't think, but it is very kind of, that area of, like you say, of kind of hell.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Helheimen is like, it's located in down and north, so I just felt like it could be good because like Norway is in the north. So, and also I guess it was like longing, or I felt like I missed to have something that connected me with Norwegian, Scandinavian, Nordic culture and literature that wasn't World War II, because we have a lot about that in school, but not too much about Nordic mythology and history, and so I guess also I was really depressed when I started, so I guess the name also kind of reflects that. I was like clinically depressed when and I got that diagnosis in I guess 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not clinically depressed anymore, but I guess it also, like, it was a way for me to have an outlet to express myself, like feeling a bit down and dark, and then
So basically,
and also it's fun. I mean, it's fun. Like, it's nothing. I'm not like, oh, I'm so dark, and I mean, I have a distance to it.
But so this means simply that what you did was that you started a photography project based off of your interest in like the Scandinavian past and it like the Scandinavian space as well, like the nature and the historical sites and so on, and basically like did that as sort of like a thing for therapy, self-therapy to an extent.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that conscious, but I feel like I mean, depression makes you feel kind of distant from things. So I was looking for a way to connect myself with myself, and I just thought, like, what's better way to go like back to my roots.
I think a lot of it is having something to give you purpose as well. No matter how small, it's just having that something that gives you a reason. It gives you a reason to do anything, I guess. You have this little Instagram page at the time, I imagine, and it gave you focus creating each image, having fun with it, putting it together, takes your mind away from the side of things, and eventually you kind of claw your way out of this dark little hole, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And it has, I mean, it has definitely connected me more towards like my roots, my or Norwegian and Nordic history, but also with people. I mean, I met so many great people through Instagram, and I've gotten like a lot of good friends through Instagram. So I feel like, I think a lot of people these days feel this need to feel real connection, and in music, with people, with themselves. So I'm not saying like, oh, I'm like, this is unique for me. I think a lot of people have had that kind of longing in one type of way. And Mathias, you're really fortunate to have been raised with more awareness around your history and heritage and everything. So I mean, that's really, when I heard that in one of the podcasts, I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think that was that's definitely one of the parts of my childhood that I'm really happy about. Like, having been introduced to all these, old stories in different ways, and not just for the Scandinavian region, but also the Celtic stories, Irish folklore, and Greenlandic folklore as well. I think that for me is sort of like just set everything in sort of like a natural order, like in the way that I relate to the world around me. So yeah, no, sometimes you have to like work a little hard, I guess, to like get to that point and get to that feeling. But I think everybody can do it, and I really like the way that you're doing it. I'm personally a big fan of the aesthetics and the images that you make.
Yeah, there's some absolutely beautiful photos on there. And I've got to ask, and this is, I guess, might be a little bit of a strange question, but have you noticed a change?
Good.
Have you noticed a change in your art style as you've kind of come out of this depression? Have you seen it alter at all? Has it got a little bit lighter, or has it stayed the same?
I think I have like the direction is a bit more clearer. I feel like at least my stories, I'm a bit more relaxed. I don't. I'm a bit more relaxed. I don't think that much about things over and over again. And I mean, of course, when you do something for a couple of years, you feel more confident and you feel better. And I actually took a break from Instagram as well, because I felt like I was at the point where I just like did this for, I didn't feel like it was giving me anything. So I took a break, but now that I'm back, I feel like it's a bit more. I'm doing this because I have a clear intention and I enjoy it, and I also really like to share like fun facts and different historical stuff with people, because I get so much like joy out of it myself, like reading about different stuff, and I really like to share that with other people. Like I just found out that, I know this for a while, but when I found out that like in Norwegian, we, for example, say that if something goes bad, you can say, okay, I can't remember Norwegian now. If something goes bad, you can say, det gikk nord og ned, or then it's a way of saying it went really bad, and it means directly translated, it went north and down. And that comes from, or you can say like, vi koste oss i hjel. Like we had so much hygge, we had so much, we had such a cozy, great time that we went to hell, like we died. Or,
Yeah, I mean, to kill somebody in Danish is also to strike them into hell.
yeah, slå ihjäl. Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, I think we also have, I've definitely heard it in Danish before, the expression, it went north and downwards.
Yeah.
So,
or like hun ble kritisert nord og ned, like she was criticized north and down. Or you can say frøs ihjel, like freezed to hell. So there's a lot of, like when I read stuff like that, I'm just like, woo, this is so much fun. I love like connecting things with, things I didn't know before. So I hope that other people who like read what I write under the pictures sometimes like also get some kind of like nerdgasm.
Yeah, hopefully they read what you put. It's so easy to just kind
probably
of
not. Yeah, probably very few people do that. But
I sometimes do it as well. That I'll write these huge long paragraphs and and put a nice picture on there, and I'm like, I bet 1% of these people have actually read what I've wrote.
Yeah, I mean, probably. But I mean, if you enjoy something, then, I think then you first do it because it gives you some type of joy. And for those 10% or 20% who reads it, then hopefully as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's key to remember as well with Instagram, you seem to have got to this point now where you just enjoy doing it for you. And, you create these pictures, you create these posts, put them into the world, and you're happy with that. Whereas I think it's easy, especially when you first start, to get hung up on the feedback from others and wanting likes, wanting comments. And it can get quite a negative space if you don't reach the kind of levels and the bars that you set for yourself. I know it's particularly when I first started with Horns of Odin, I was posting pictures of these horns that I worked I spent a lot of time on expecting to get like hundreds of likes, and I got like 10. And it's like, it can be quite disheartening at the time, but at the end of the day, you've got to do it for you, and the rest will follow as long as you have fun with it.
Yeah, I think people, I guess, catch up. The right people will catch up. And if not, it means you suck. So.
Well, tell you how it is.
No, I mean, it's so much to do with like, a lot of, you can use a lot of, some people are good with like, using different tactics to reach out. So it's, of course, also with that, like you can have a great song. That's amazing. But if you don't have the right people around you, then it might not reach its potential of it. So it's, I mean, it's not, that was a joke. I don't.
No, I know what you mean. Because it can be so easy. You see, I mean, I'll say it as it is. You see some stuff that is absolutely terrible, but gets loads of attention. And it's just because that particular person is really good at marketing and really knows how to put it in front of the right people. And then you get some people who do such amazing work and it just kind of stays in the shadows because they're a true artist and they're not necessarily the best at getting it out there. And you've got to try and find this balance, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Balance is definitely key. I know
some people do just suck though.
There's also an element of just basic arbitrariness. What, Daniel? You speak English. Which word is it?
I'm the last person you want to ask.
Well, there's an element of that stuff being arbitrary too. Like, right? There's like, if
I ever get stuck like that, what I do is I just rephrase the sentence really quickly so it doesn't have to use that word anymore.
Yeah, that would have been smart, but here we are. But my point was that, sometimes like you get like reblogged, for instance, or reposted by somebody famous, and then all of a sudden, like whatever it is, your Instagram or YouTube or something like that, like blows up for a while. And like I think, and you can put a lot of awesome stuff out there and then, get overlooked for years. And then all of a sudden, because of one single instance, one event, so to speak, and then boom, everybody is like, oh, this guy. And then at some point, like you're everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that with
Exactly.
in a
It's like,
couple.
oh, where did this guy come
For
from?
sure.
He's amazing. It's like, well, he's been working for 20 years with his craft. It didn't just come from anything.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of great, humble artists out there who definitely don't get the credit they deserve, I think.
Yeah,
No, absolutely
I agree.
not. Matthias, arbitrarily was the word you were looking for.
Arbitrarily, yeah.
It only took me about a minute to think of. but on that note, I think one of the prime examples I always use would be like George R.R. Martin. You know, he was writing books for years and years, and Game of Thrones was out for a long time before it got picked up by HBO to become this big blockbuster TV show. And I think people kind of look at it and go, fuck me, this show, this concept came out of nowhere, this writer came out of nowhere. And it's like, you know, he hustled for decades before he got the recognition that he deserved for that piece of art. And that's the case for so many people. It's not just whether it's a musician, whether it's a photographer. You know, they'll put out hundreds of songs, and then you never know which is going to be that one that clicks and that one that blows up. And I think it's easy for people on the outside to look in and go, I guess it's kind of been like that hater mentality of looking out and going, oh, they've made it so easy. How did they do it so quickly? And it's like, well, it doesn't work like that. There's hours and hours and hours before you get to that point.
Yeah, I think it's like you kind of tend to, or not, yeah, just people in general maybe like pay a lot of the attention on those rare cases where it's like they do something once and it blows up.
Mm-hmm.
But I love to read stories about people who have been like working on something for years, and then finally people catch up. I think it's so much like it's a lot more inspiring, and I think it's more realistic as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So like when I read like, oh, he made this one song in 2 minutes and it blew up, and just think, yeah, that's amazing, great for you, but I'm not gonna have my focus or attention on that, because I know I will probably never be able to do something that quick and have it blow up.
Do you think that ever actually happens, or do you think that's part of them almost playing it down to try and be cool as well? It kind of have this cool exterior of like, oh yeah, it only took me 2 minutes, you know. And it's like, well, did it, or have you spent hundreds of hours learning the instrument? Have you spent, you know, all this time mastering your craft, and then you happen to have just got to a point where you've done something? I feel like it's easy once people are there and they've made it. It's easy for them to look back and kind of downplay the struggles of getting there to look like it was very easy and nonchalant.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That
Me
can also
too,
be the
man.
case. Yeah.
There's definitely those types out there.
Yeah, well, I think we're all guilty of it a little bit sometimes. Well, you know, if you really struggle at doing something, sometimes it can be a bit easy to go, yeah, it wasn't that hard, when it was.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So Stine, I would like to just talk a little bit about the aesthetics in the pictures that you take and you make. So one of the things that caught my eye when I was looking at them is this the contrast between light and dark that seems to be very present, and also the fragmentations of light. Actually, from what I know of sort of a like broadly speaking Scandinavian aesthetic, this is actually quite a traditional style. The tendency to focus on things that will or visuals that fragment light in different ways and like brings the darkness in with the light and mix it up, if that makes sense. Is there any have you like can you speak to that? Is there anything you have been thinking about that, or anything that you focus on in particular when you make these images?
Yeah, I think I do that. Like it's mostly intentionally. I think one reason is just that I like it, and I'm probably socialized to like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like growing up with kittles and just traditional, like the drawings you see on traditional to Norwegian folk tales. It's usually like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess socialized into liking it. Like,
Right. Yeah.
and also I mean I think it plays well with kind of the theme, and also Hel, she's presented as this like have, at least in Snorre, she's presented as being like half human and half blue, or like this like weird-ish dark color on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to like keep stuff a bit with a theme, and I guess I just feel more comfortable with it for those reasons. Is probably because of how bright and dark it is. Like it's so bright during summer and so dark during winter, so it probably does something to your mentality, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like speaking towards that, I currently live on, a latitude that is like more like northern Africa. Actually, I don't think a lot of people actually realize how southern America or the United States actually are. But like Colorado, where it is like corresponds to like northern Africa and like southern Spain-ish around there, and for several years, into summer, what I was like really missing were those like bright northern summers where you just have like light all the way into like the midnight. So I totally understand that. That's like, I still miss that actually.
Yeah, it's really nice. Just like it's summer and it's 3 o'clock and it's still like the sun is not up, but it's bright still.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
You just mentioned Kittelsen before. I mean, there's a lot of inspiration in your images from him. I mean, I think I'm seeing Nøkken in one of them, right?
Yeah, Nøkken and Pasta.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really cool, and it's about time that you see modern interpretations of those. If you ask me, I think that's really awesome. Are there any other Norwegian artists that have like strongly influenced your art?
I would say it's more general, but Odd Nerdrum as well. I really like his like just simplistic, more like without a time type of paintings.
Right.
I tend to like things that look a bit realistic in paintings. And I would also say Ivo Caprino and like Askeladden and dolls, and how they are presented in like there's this for those of you who are not Norwegian, there's a lot of kids in Norway grew up watching Norwegian fairy tales, but it's adapted into, it's like made with dolls, and it's really cool. I really enjoyed it. So probably him as well. It just sits from childhood when I think about creatures, Norwegian or Scandinavian creatures from like mythology. I think I'm very influenced by that as well. Even though he's not like a painting artist, but yeah, I would say he makes very beautiful, cool dolls. So an artist in a way.
I think one picture I have to ask about is the second to most recent one, where it looks like you're about to eat a small child.
Yeah.
And I have to ask where the inspiration comes from that, and who's the poor kid?
It's my niece. It's my niece, and it's so funny. My sister my brother took the shots, and my sister helped. She was a photo assistant, and it's so funny because the second picture that is taken after, like the Emilia, my niece, she looks terrified. But,
Oh, I
then
bet.
in the second picture, there's a picture of her smiling and laughing. So it was just like one
Mhm.
shot. But yeah, it was that's the illusion, I guess, of photography. And the inspiration is I have always said grilla, but it's grilla, I think, how you pronounce it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's a female gigra, female troll from she's mostly, I mean, she's mentioned in Snorre Sturluson as well, I think, or some pre or was it maybe pre Snorre as well?
I think the legend is medieval, but actually, embarrassingly, I can't really, I can't remember. But I mean, she is a part of, Icelandic folk tales.
And she comes and eats children when it's Yule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
during Christmas time, she
Yeah.
will come and eat the kids.
So I read about her, and that was my inspiration.
You did well with the photo then, because I knew none of that, and I just assumed from the picture you was going to eat a small child. So you you captured the essence very well.
Thank you. And here it says Mike Carrington is writing Grilla is originally mentioned as being a giantess in the 13th century. A compilation of Norse mythology, Prose Edda, but no specific connection to Christmas is mentioned until the 7th century. Yeah, okay. She is a Norse and her appearance is repulsive. I actually read one place that it's even before the 13th century, but she was definitely not connected to Yule at that point, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, please get closer to the. Yeah.
I think it's when you were just reading that you turned your head away from the microphone for a minute.
Okay.
So I'm not entirely sure where our very helpful producer has gotten that reference, because I'm not seeing her mentioned in the index in Snorre Sturluson's Edda. So it could be that the person who has written that on Wikipedia might have misunderstood something, but that I'm pretty sure that she is medieval in origin, but yeah, that's a scholarly conversation, I guess.
So it said that she was forbidden to use as like a way to scare your children in Iceland, because people would use her so much to be like, oh, if you're not behaving well, Grilla will come and eat you. So it was prohibited then, but they still do it.
Of course they do. Parents will do anything to make their children behave.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I like to do my own sort of modern interpretations of old Norse mythology, I think. And I also learn a lot in the process. Like, it's not like I know everything from before I try to do some research. But even then, it's just so hard to find good sources online. Like, I tried to prepare a bit for today about Hel and the underworld, and it's just a mess when it comes to good sources, and it's so much raw, like, false information. And, yeah,
I don't have to worry about that. I've got Matthias to ask.
Yeah, so I'm really really excited about that. But I found like some etymology. I'm sorry, but my English is just not etymology.
Etymology.
Yeah.
Yeah, that word. I have an interest in languages, but I obviously can't speak. So sorry about that. But I was looking at Hel, and her name is concealed, at least. So I guess that's a good place to start. Then you can say, like, hands down, that's what means, and then the rest gets complicated, I guess, after that.
Perfect. Should we get started on the bulk of the episode, I guess, which is Hel? I have a lot to ask. So you've kind of mentioned geographically or hinted towards it being north and down. Is that kind of is that accurate as a place as it would be? And how much does that link to, I guess, it being very cold up north and pretty inhabitable and somewhere you don't want to go? So it would naturally be the place where you would assume the dead would be, I guess.
So there's a couple of things. In the story of Baldur's death in Snorri Sturluson's Edda, that's where we have the episode where Hermodr, Odin's other son, rides to Hel to retrieve Baldur, or try to retrieve Baldur. And that's where we get this reference where Mothgudr, so he rides for, so and so long through deep dark valleys and all that stuff, and then he comes to a river and there's a bridge, and then there's this figure, warden, guardian of the underworld, who's like guarding the bridge, and he asks this figure, this person, demon, whatever it is, if they've seen Baldur, and then I think it's a she, but I'm not entirely sure. She says something like, he came by here, and in order to find him, you have to go norður og niður, so north and downwards. So that's like a concept that seems to be pretty consistent throughout the literature. I mean, we see in other that somebody who goes to the underworld or some kind of like underworldly site in sagas or other histories, even like the Danish historian Saxo even has a story like this. They travel to the north, and then they have to like pass beyond the stars and the moon and the sun, or they have to like go through thick fog or cross a river that'll kill you if you touch it. And then you enter like this underworld or other world where everything is just like funky. And yeah, that's definitely part of the whole, like the general conception. And I think we could perhaps sort of relate that to Viking Age archaeology as well, where in Viking Age archaeology, the graves and such, what we often see is that people are buried with means of transport, which kind of suggests the idea that they are going to have to like travel to the underworld from that grave. And so that could very easily be that north and downwards, the direction that they're going. And yeah, absolutely. Anybody who had been, sailing north and rounding Lofoten up in northern Norway would probably be like, yeah, going any further north, that's definitely going to the underworld.
It's interesting because in my mind, I tend to think about like going down as going south.
Yeah.
So
I think that's
it went down south. Oh, that's also an expression.
Yeah, seems very British. If that's how I've always looked at it as well, is north is up and south is down, and it's almost very childlike a way of looking at a map.
Yeah, definitely. But in ancient Egypt, still like northern Egypt is called Lower Egypt, and South Egypt is called Lower Egypt. Did I get that right?
Upper and Lower Egypt.
Yeah,
yes.
It gets like North Egypt is down. God,
that's the lower
opposite.
part, right?
Yeah, that's the lower, and then south is Upper Egypt.
Yes.
and it's still called that. So I mean, how that as concepts obviously change. So I just I actually thought about that when reading Down and North. Like people had different direction conceptions.
They probably
over
had
time.
very little concept of north on a map as
Well,
like I mean, they probably maybe had some, but when it comes to like a compass-wise north,
yeah,
them up probably made more sense than anything else, or down. It was very kind of everyday geographical.
So for medieval mapping, what we know is that actually Asia used to be up. So when you have like a medieval map of the world, say like in the 1300s, like the Hereford map, right? That's like a big round disc because they kind of thought that the world looked like that.
Some
and then
people still do.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Or again. So
Well, yeah.
they had Asia up. Like that would be the part that would be pointing upwards if you had like the map on like vertical, right?
Yeah.
And then Europe would usually be on the lower left side, and Africa on the lower right side. And that's because of the directions from which like Christ is supposed to come in Christianity. This is also why you have graves aligned so that if you're a medieval Christian and Christ shows up over there in Asia, then you rise up and you can see him. So you're aligned east-west for that. And yeah, so
how do you know this stuff?
That's my job, man.
Well, that isn't.
Yeah, it's part of it because this is also how you recognize Christian graves in the Viking Age in Scandinavia.
Oh, okay.
I read something about graves being turned like with the entrance to the south and then the exit towards the north as well. Is that?
So we have some. When it comes to non-Christian graves in Scandinavia, the picture is incredibly broad. We do have some indications of like alignments, like for instance, Gorm the Old, the father of Harold Bluetooth, and the guy who's like credited with Christianizing Denmark, especially because he like carved it in a runestone and stuff. So that king, he was buried in a burial mound that was in the center of what was recently believed to have been the biggest stone ship setting in Scandinavia. And that stone ship setting, which is huge, by the way, was aligned north-south. So this suggestion has sort of like been that it was symbolically like sailing with the burial mounds to the north. That's at least like an interpretation that is like floated around. Sometimes, yeah, we also see entrances aligned north and south, but it looks like these, the construction of graves and such in the Viking Age are very much like localized cosmologies, like in that particular area or relating to a particular family or community. So it can be really difficult to actually say exactly this is how Vikings thought that it worked out. But the idea of like going north at least seems to have been one of the ideas that has sort of like become more stable later on. So I think that there's probably a lot of them who eventually sort of like ended up with like yeah that people go that way,
And do you maybe think that because Hermod is advised to go, I mean, Hel is located like down in north, like you imagine going north as something, like you said, it's harder to go there. It's a more unpleasant journey than going south.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess they knew what was south as well. Like they had an idea. If you're in Norway, you knew, I guess, that Denmark was south and then Europe was south of that. Whereas north, I imagine they only got so far and then was like, fuck this, there's not much up there. So it's easy to then say, well, beyond that has got to be there's got to be. They probably thought something's beyond that. Well, why can't it be hell?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
They were
I
well
think-
traveled people, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they definitely knew, sort of like, quote unquote, knew what was up there in the sense that they knew that direction, that's where you have ice and a grimy polar bear. And yeah, I'm sure that anybody with the awareness of that would probably locate a realm of the dead in that direction too.
Yeah, probably because you died if you went up there.
That's also part of it, I guess. Aside from that, of course, we also have some influence from other types of medieval literature. We have the vision literature, this type of literature that starts with perhaps with Saint Paul, actually, stories about going to the underworld and or sometimes also go into heaven. The best example of this that we know in Western culture is Dante's Divine Comedy. That would be the best sort of like known example. But that type of literature is like very widespread long before him. And what we see in Scandinavia is actually is sort of like a fusion in the after conversion and in the medieval period, a fusion of the idea of going to the underworld and going to hell to learn things about how God will punish you and all that stuff. And that is fused with local cosmology in the sense that, then you sometimes go on a horizontal level instead, and then you go down or something like that. And that's exactly what's happening in Saxo's history of the Danes. We have this, like, he basically introduces Christianity to Denmark through an Icelander who is hanging out at the Danish king's court, and he's telling all these stories about Nordic mythology. And then people are like, fuck this guy. Let's try to make him go and find these gods that he keeps talking about. And then he goes on this like crazy journey where he finds Loki, who's like tied in a cave somewhere on an island far up in the North Sea. And then he goes somewhere else where he finds Geirröður and his 3 daughters that have had their backs broken by Thor in the underworld, in like this like weird, grimy, dark castle. And like, it's actually a really awesome story. But all that stuff happens sort of more on a horizontal level than going down into hell. And Saxo's purpose is to tell people that, this is the pagan gods suck. And, in the end, this Icelandic guy, he ends up in Germany and gets is baptized and then comes back to Denmark, and the Danish king finds out just how much his gods suck, and then he dies. So it's actually a really weird story, but it's pretty awesome. Very metal too, actually.
So, I mean, I guess there's no confusion over there's clearly some sort of link, I guess, between hell and Christian hell, or at least in the name.
Yeah, the name, definitely.
So which one came first? Who got there first?
I mean,
Pagans did.
Yeah, the name definitely hell. It's from Old Norse, and you can also trace it back to Proto-Germanic. So it's a really old word, and it means concealed. And I mean, the death is concealed to the people who are alive. So it makes a lot of sense that it's called hell.
Okay.
So, and I mean, there's, but in Spanish, it's infierno. So in Latin, something similar as well. So it's totally different. So definitely the word came from Proto-Germanic and came from Hel, the world or the goddess. And you also have, I have taken notes on this, but you have the root in Old
Are you able to pull the microphone over to the way that you're looking?
Yeah, in Old Irish, it says it's kel, so k and H sound is pretty similar, like where it's placed in the mouth, like you.
Okay.
So and that also means to it's related to extinction and death. So it's more like directly linked with something with death. But I mean, yeah, concealed also it makes sense at least. And then you have to kill, which is to execute. So it kind of makes sense. And you also have another Proto-Germanic word, kveljanan, which is to torture or kill. In Norwegian, you have kvele, which means to strangle. But yeah, you usually die from that. So, but Mathias, I also found something interesting about hel, because it looks like the actual word, because it looks like it can also be connected to hölje, or like pour down, or and hylja. And we say, if Norwegian, we say if the rain is pouring down, we say it's höljer. And that sounds like hail, which is the H rune. So I don't know if I'm like a bit all over the place, but can you connect the H rune to Hagalas, to the maybe not hail, but at least the word itself? Because it would make sense because it's cold in hail.
Yeah, so I am not sure that is it's possible to connect the word hail, hagalas, to hell. Just looking it up though, because it's actually kind of interesting. Hegel, hagel. No, that one is seems to be related to an old Proto-Germanic word for pebble. But what we have right in those Norwegian words that you're talking about is the same origin as, for instance, in the Danish hylle, inhylle,
yep.
Which basically means to cover, shroud, right? So I'm pretty sure, without having investigated that any further, that's probably the same origin as hell as well. Yep. Because this root is very productive, both in like Germanic, but also in Romance languages, like the English word cellar, basement, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From that same. So
yeah, we have kjeller in Norwegian.
Yeah, in kela in Danish. Yeah, so they're exactly the same.
Yeah, it's a very like amazing word. Like there's so many things that stems out from it seems. So I also saw that one page. It was a bit it didn't use that many sources, but it did actually. I just saw it. I looked up online 5 minutes ago before the podcast that they wrote like the H rune is hell or something, and I was like, I don't know, but it could maybe make sense. But it's it's easy to get carried away. As well. Yeah,
that's the main problem with like the science of etymology. Like if things like sound alike, people have a tendency, and this, we have a lot of like folk etymology in Scandinavia and broadly also in Europe, like these ideas that like, oh, this word comes from the same origin because it sounds the same, right? The best example is a lot of you can find a lot of people claiming that Thor has like a whole lot of place names in Scandinavia, because there are a lot of places that's called Tor something here and there. When you go back, a couple of generations of books that are like listing place names for different reasons, like maybe you have a local book on like who owns what land and that kind of stuff, then you'll usually find that these place names that are associated with Thor by modern people looking at them, because like Scandinavians think, oh, that's got to be the same. They might actually be, derived from a word that means shit instead, and then something entirely different. So that's like one of the things that happens once in a while, and it's easy to like think, oh yeah. That's that makes sense. What with the word hail, what needs to be explained is of course old G that appears in the word that you see, for instance, in Old English, hagel, and that doesn't fit with the root for the word for hell. Because that doesn't have that in there, so that's our main lead into like saying that it's probably not the same origin. But no, it's the interesting thing is that in Northern Europe, the idea of that like covered underworld that's not necessarily full of a lot of fire and brimstone and sulfur and all that stuff has actually persisted. The idea that hell is an inferno, as you mentioned, the Spanish word is inferno. That is a very Christian way of thinking about it, and it comes from Pope Gregory, who literally wrote about the torturous inferno that you will find in the volcanoes of Sicily. That's what he's saying. And you see then later on Icelandic intellectuals being like, well, we have that right over there. So like that's got to be another entrance to hell as well. But that's like very medieval theory for Scandinavia. Before that, it was like some kind of like more like cold, dank, dark place.
Yeah, not much going on.
No.
It seems, but still, I find it interesting when you like. I think I'm not sure, but if I remember correctly, Snorri at one point writes that hell is an unpleasant, awful place. But then, when Balder dies and goes to hell, and I mean, even that it says that Balder is the favorite god, and then he goes to hell. I mean, it can't be that bad, because I mean, he writes that the bad people go to hell, but then Balder, who is the favorite god, goes to hell. So it doesn't make any sense, and it's annoying. And then and then also when Hermod goes to ask, oh please, can Balder come out of hell, she's like, if everyone cries for him, then I will I will see that he's important for the world. So she's actually giving him a chance, and Nanna, his wife, is there with him, and she has already greeted Balder with a feast, and he's on the høysete, the high seat. And then Balder escorts Hermod out. So it's not like he's a prisoner either. It seems like he's more like subject to some type of law that you're dead, so you have to kind of stay here. So I mean, it's already a lot of contradictions in there, but I think it's so. I mean, it's definitely not like a Christian hell, because she has all these like high, like she has farms, she has high walls, tall buildings, and it's no mention of her having servants that punishes people, just like she has two servants who walks so slowly that no one has seen them walk, which is
the service in this place is shitty.
To piggyback on the back of that, I think you have this idea of hell being horrible, torturous. Satan's there with his whips and whatever else, and you're going to be punished for eternity. Whereas, how accurate is that to kind of like Norse mythology version of hell, Mathias, in that it seems a little bit harsh in the fact that most people who if you don't die in battle, the idea is that you go to hell. And it seems pretty harsh if you're going to suffer forever just for not dying in battle. Obviously, I understand the ideal situation is to go out in the warriors, go out swinging and go to Valhalla. But if that doesn't happen, you were taken by sickness. It seems a little mean to be sent to like the Christian version of hell.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to say, and let's just to like dial back to what you were pointing out, Stine, with the disconnect between Balder being like the best of all the gods, and then going to hell, and all of that stuff. That is Snorri Sturluson's opinion about him. So
yeah.
So the interesting thing is that Snorri, he's very clever in his representation of all of this. Yeah. He tells us this is a place called hell.
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, like, he didn't make any sense with like
yeah. And that's because he wants to sneak a Christian punishment of sinners into the story. That's what he's doing here. He's So in his Christian mind, I think it's the 5th level of hell. That's for heathens. And that's how he perceives the Nordic gods. Snorri Sturluson thought of the Nordic gods as humans. He thought that they were sorcerers who were basically capable of tricking people to believe that they were gods. That he explains all of this in the prologue to the Edda. So this you have to see the death of Balder in Snorri Sturluson's description in relation to that. Yeah. And so that tells
that
us
they come from Asia.
And that they came from Asia, that they came from Troy even. And so that's part of his representation. But if we try to like take the story of Balder's death out of that Christian context and say, like, well, what would this have looked like if for people who had never heard about the Christian ideas of the underworld? And that brings us to your question, Daniel, about like this weird disconnect between like a warrior paradise and then shitty afterlife for everybody else. Mm-hmm. That's again, I think, very Snorri, who is like inflating ideas about Valhöll that obviously are from the Viking Age. They're the earliest ideas of Valhöll, and the idea of like quote unquote warrior paradise are definitely from the Viking Age. But I don't think, first of all, that it was particularly a paradise in their minds. This is very Snorri. He is the one who takes certain stances out of the poem Grimnismal. And then he says, oh, look at this. They eat bacon and they get drunk and they're having a party.
Sounds like fucking really, paradise to me.
It does sound like paradise, but that's not really what those stances actually say. So okay. They are much more cryptic, like when it comes down to it. The one that he uses, I think, is 18, number 18 from Grimnismal. I can't remember exactly. But that one says actually, but few know what the Einherja actually eat. So it's like they don't eat that bacon that you're talking about. It literally says in the stanza, we don't know what they live off. Mm-hmm. So like there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of messing around with the source material from Snorri's side. So that's one thing. And then the question is like, is hell that dreary? Does it suck that much? And Snorri gives us this long description of like how the dish is called hunger and the knife is called famine. So that indicates that there's nothing to eat there, right? Mm-hmm. And the curtains are called gleaming bale or sickness or whatever, something like that. So it sucks. And that's again because he wants to contrast with that warrior paradise that he's like creating for us. Because his idea of like the Vikings, these pre-Christian ancestors of his, was that they were all about war and being jerk-offs. Like we have to actually consider that he thought they were kind of jerk offs. So that's also part of it. And so of course, naturally, they would have like sort of like same kind of like Christian ideas about heaven and hell, but it would just be, you know, different in the sense that they were all about war. So paradise must be all about war, right? That's really what he's doing. If we go to Saxo again, who's such a treasure trove when it comes to Nordic mythology, actually, we have another idea where you find Valhalla. Saxo has placed Valhalla in hell. Like you go to the underworld to find that place where warriors go to, and he doesn't have any descriptions of a feast or awesome partying in Odin's hall and all that stuff. All he has is eternal war in the underworld. But he is like almost verbatim quoting parts of the poem Völuspá, for instance, talking about the rivers of axes and swords and all that stuff. So these are two different Christian authors in medieval times trying to tell us a couple of things about their ancestors who weren't Christians, right? If we go back,
so complicated.
It is always complicated. But if we go to like, what did these people probably think? Like, did those people who lived before Christianity in Scandinavia, they probably had more of an idea that the afterlife kind of mirrored the life that you had lived, that you, for instance, had the same status. If you were a king, you would also be a king in the afterlife. If you were a peasant, you would be a peasant in the afterlife, and so on. And I mean, if you think about it, they loaded up people's graves with all kinds of items, grave goods, things that they obviously thought these people would need in death. So that means then that they also thought that you needed, a nice little package of goodies to bring with you to the underworld so you can be set up, right? So in a sense, basically, when you didn't talk about hell as this covered place, this place that we can't see, it's probably like they're probably just thinking that, you pass beyond that veil that shrouds that person from us, and to live a similar type of life over there in the other world.
It seems more Egyptian in its idea than that you go to another place and carry on living a life and you have to take things with you into this world, rather than a Christian version of the afterlife. Because I guess, I mean, I'm not Christian, I don't profess to have ever know much about it, but I guess my idea of heaven is that you kind of go there, you don't really need anything because everything's there laid out waiting for you. Whatever you need, you get a little halo above your head, and that's that, that you don't have to take anything with you because you're looked after with whatever your heart desires.
So it's, as far as I understand, the original Christian theology was actually that all that stuff was going to happen here on earth, not go to heaven. Yeah. That if we were Christian, then we would basically rise from the dead when Christ comes back, and those who weren't Christian, they would perish, and then you would have eternal life on earth. Okay. And then people started dying because the original congregation, they thought that they're going to live forever, and then they started dying, and then they freaked out, and then the ball of theology, so to speak, started rolling. And
so that's when Christianity adapted to suit like scientific finds and the changing of ideology.
Yeah.
Who thought they'd do that?
And by the way, to be fair, those descriptions of hell and the underworld in Mediterranean Europe, that's actually very close to a lot of pre-Christian Roman and Greek mythology. So
I think a lot of, pre-Christian religions have so much in common. You could even go to, Yoruba religion in Nigeria, and you see like a pantheon of gods. Even in West Africa was very similar to pantheon of gods in Greece or Nordic mythology. So it's or in Hinduism as well. So it's just I think it's so refreshing to read about, because it kind of, even though you're not a Christian, how we are socialized into seeing the world is so influenced by it. So it's so refreshing to read about other types of worldviews. Because
I would say it makes perfect sense to me anyway, that when you don't understand something, that you would attach these deities to individual aspects of it rather than one kind of omnipresent, omnipotent God. That, for me anyway, if I didn't understand something, I would just assume that the lightning coming from the sky was an individual God, and then you would pray to something else for your crops to grow, or if you needed rain, you would pray to something else, that you would have all these individual deities. So it's no surprising that no matter where you go in the world, that human beings have kind of had this same idea of individual gods for individual aspects of what you want to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, like, hell, it's said to be the biggest, can I call it death realm, Mathias, like death world, because there's difference and there are different ones. So just people thinking that most people will go to hell, because most people live normal lives, like they don't have these like an extraordinary death in battle, for example, and them just thinking that most people will end up in hell. It sounds so weird even when I say it, because it sounds like something bad, but they were probably like, we are mostly farmers here, so most people live ordinary lives and die of hunger or old age or disease, and those people go to hell. So on that note, Mathias, I wanted to ask you, because it's probably the literature geek in me that wants too much, but I was thinking that maybe, like, because the knife is called and plates called hunger or sult, like it can be read as a way that people die when they go to hell. So like all these things that she has as a possession, it's actually, you can interpret it as that's how the types of deaths that people die when they go there. There's another thing that she has called like stoop, like deep, I don't know the word for it in English, but like a deep cliff that you fall down from. So I mean, that was also a way that people died. So I just
stumbling block.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really good suggestion, actually. Like, we could see, like, again, Snorri is creating like this like nice little picture, but we could take all these elements and then say, these are the main ways that people would die. Like 90% of Scandinavians in the Viking Age would live lives where they die from illness or hunger or old age, right? So that makes perfect sense, actually. I really like that interpretation.
Is really, really conservative as well. That's kind of one thing I was just about to say. Was we have this modern idea of kind of the Viking Age, and they all want to go to Valhalla, and they've been very war and battle torn. And I think it must be like 1% of people went to war, surely. When you actually look down on kind of this whole place of an entire population of people, it must have been such a small percentage of people who actually went to war and then died in battle. It seems incredibly harsh that the only way to go to kind of like this amazing place is through that. So if I was like a regular person in Scandinavia, I'd be pretty pissed if it was kind of like this Snorri idea of, Valhalla's great and everybody else, it sucks for you guys, tough shit, get over it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people necessarily thought about it like that, because there's another world where unmarried women go, who are virgins, and unmarried. So then if you were a woman and you'd be, no, I don't want to go to this horrible place, so I'm just gonna like stay unmarried my whole life so I can go to this nice place. Like it doesn't add up to, there's a lot of inconsistencies. So I don't think, and also with just Balder going there and it seems like it's okay. So I don't think we have to try to detach ourselves from the idea of El Infierno, hell, like even though the words are so closely related in Norwegian, the Christian hell is called helvete, like helviti, like I guess it means concealed punishment if you so I guess it's a good mental exercise to try to detach yourself from hell being a place of punishment and more just maybe a place of you go there and not a lot, it seems like not a lot happens. But it's a concealed place, so it's also implying like people don't know what will happen.
I think that's like the biggest takeaway right there. Like these people back in the day, they basically like they came up with a bunch of euphemisms for saying like we don't really know what is going to happen, and they seem to be okay with that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have always found a little curious is like this tendency with so many people like wondering what's going to happen when I die. It's like, who the fuck cares? Like I mean, let's try
concealed.
to live now. It's concealed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and I was gonna make another point. Just like when you write literature, for example, like Snorre does it, he says like one rule is that if you say that someone is bad, for example, you have to follow it up by good writing is okay, how is that person bad? Like describe it. So Snorre says hell, like the bad people go to hell. But then there's, from my understanding, not a lot of follow-up from that, because what comes after is like, yeah, there's nothing, and then there's Balder who has a party with Hermod and Hel, and Hermod stays the night, and Nanna is there, and I mean...
And he gets to take a nice golden ring with him when he goes home.
Yeah. Wasn't it Odin that gave the golden ring to Balder, like put it in the grave, and then like he sends it up again to... Yeah. That's
I mean, Snorri is giving us good stories about these things. He obviously has a lot of knowledge about what actually went on in pre-Christian times. This is the fascinating thing about it. The description of Balder's death, where Balder is put on a funeral pyre. There's horses, there's the boat, there's golden rings, there's gifts and all that stuff. Like this is straight up what we find in archaeology, right? So like Snorri must have had some kind of knowledge, like in one way or another, about what happened in these, at least like the big magnate graves of the Viking Age. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to give us that description. Now, whether that came as a sort of like a story that he had heard himself, like for instance, maybe he had heard the story of Balder's death in another context, or if it came in through like piecing together knowledge, or maybe even at a written document. Who knows, right? He did have something, and he did actually like give us some real information. He's just putting it all into his own little framework.
Yeah, that's probably why like he can add some of his own stuff, but then it doesn't add up with the information that he's given, so it just clashes. I wanted to ask you about because Hel, she's the child of Loke and Angerboda, both these great Jotuns, and she is the sister of Fenris, the Fenris wolf, and some people say Fenrir, and then she's the sister of Midgard's worm. Is that how you say it in English? Midgard serpent. Sorry.
Yeah.
So then they are all raised in Jotunheimen. It seems so. So funny to think about like this, like a bit creepy looking woman, and she has two brothers. One is a worm, one is a wolf, and you have Loke, who's probably an absent father. Yeah, I really want to make a picture like just family and have like the whole.
I love the sound of this. That's amazing.
And then just have like this like really like everybody looking really happy and cozy with like and then Angerboda, who's like said to be this great witch who lives among the wolves and she's associated with wolves or the place that she lives. I think I read that in Johan Egerkrans' book about Angerboda, so I'm not sure about the direct source of that. But
right, it's the reference to one of the stanzas in Völuspá where it says that east in Ironwood sits the witch who breeds wolves, and Fenrir is one of them. So
okay.
that witch that is otherwise unknown or unnamed, at least in that particular stanza, is equated with Angerboda.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So they make love, Angerboda and Loki, and they have 3 very special kids who probably have very special needs growing up.
I honestly can't get this image out of my mind of Loki trying to round up the kids to take them out for like a family portrait. You know, that, like, I don't know if your parents ever took you to one of these ones that they booked in advance where you kind of go to a studio.
They were never in them though. It was just like me and my siblings.
There's like a little studio set up with like a box, so it looks quite Victorian, and there's a weird man there taking pictures of you.
And you have like this weird, nice looking clothes.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a box, like a chest, and you can pick out the clothes you want. So I can just imagine Loki kind of like rounding up his kids to take them to this weird photo shoot.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants
like
to make
the one time sorry?
Please, if anybody wants to make a cartoon or a drawing of that, please do.
Yeah, I will. I have been thinking about doing a family portrait at least. So, but I will probably take some, a lot of teamwork from a lot of people to do that. But it would be so cool.
I would love to see that situation with in a typical Christmas family portrait with like nice Christmas sweaters on and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be quite cool.
Oh yeah, everybody.
There's a lot of fun to be had with this, I think. We should do a competition when we get the merchandise up and running. We should have a little competition and see what people can come up with for a free t-shirt or something.
I love it.
So I was actually going to getting to a wrong. It was a question after this, but so they were raised in Jotunheimen, and then when Odin meets them, it says that he's so terrified by them. I guess it's also because of the predictions that he has heard. It says having a hard time hearing you. Is that me? Maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry. So it says, I move way too much. Sorry.
That's all right.
But then Odin sees them and he throws Hel down to hell. And then Fenris Wolf, he gets chained, and then he throws the Midgard serpent down to down in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And family is broken and separated, and they won't reunite until Ragnarok comes.
Maybe he was just terrified because he was thinking, how did this poor woman give birth to these 3 creatures?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why Loki and Angerboda kind of like hit it off. Like he had already turned himself into a female horse and given birth to a 8-legged horse. So they were like, oh yeah, we make weird kids. We should make some weird kids together.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I mean, there's some aspects of Norse mythology which are just batshit crazy. Like, I don't think they couldn't have come up with some of this stuff unless they were taking psychedelics or other types of drugs.
They probably were. I mean, there's some weed found in the Oseberg grave.
Oh yeah, but you're not getting these ideas from weed alone.
Oh, I get, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
I'm
no,
saying, well, there's weed there, so I mean that it's a gateway drug, isn't it?
Psilocybin mushrooms grow in cow dung, so
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm sure you could.
There has to have been some things, even just down to like the idea of a ship made of fingernails bringing the dead to Ragnarok.
yes, I mean, it's a beautiful way of saying cut your nails because it's dirty and bacteria under there. So, like, kind of like Grilla, like you're scaring people to behaving or do making smart decisions.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like nowadays, like what we're seeing, especially here in the US, with people being like, "No, I'm not going to wear a mask because like pandemic, I don't give it." And you're like, "Oh," it's like you need to be scared straight, my friend.
Yeah.
That's the plague. Okay, so let me just read to you how Snorri Sturluson describes this little situation with the children. He goes, that one, he's talking about Loki. That one is also reckoned among the Aesir, whom some call the Aesir's calumniator and originator of deceits and the disgrace of all gods and men. He's like really laying on a big layer here of like, screw Loki. His name is Loki, or Lopt, which means air, son of the giant Farbeti. Löve, or is his mother. Bileist and Helblindi are his brothers. Loki is pleasing and handsome in appearance, evil in character, very capricious in behavior. He possessed, to a greater degree than others, the kind of learning that is called cunning and tricks for every purpose. He was always getting the Aesir into a complete fix and often got them out of it by trick. Sigyn is the name of his wife, Nari or Narvi, their son. And Loki had other offspring too. There was a giantess called Angerboda in Giant Land, Jotunheimr. With her, Loki had 3 children. One was Fenris Wolf, the second Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, and the third Hel. And when the gods realized that these 3 siblings were being brought up in Giant Land, Jotunheimr, and when the gods traced prophecies stating that from these siblings great mischief and disaster would arise for them, then they all felt evil was to be expected from them, to begin with because of their mother's nature, but still worse because of their fathers. And then goes on to tell us how Allfather, he calls him, sent the gods to get the children and bring them to him. And when they came to him, he threw the serpent into the deep sea, which lies around all lands, and this serpent grew so that it lies in the midst of the ocean, encircling all lands, and bites on its own tail. Hel he threw into Niflheim and gave her authority over 9 worlds, such that she has to administer board and lodging to those sent to her. Then he goes on to this explanation of like how it all sucks down there and all that stuff. And then after that, we then have the story about the Fenris wolf and how they managed to chain it up after Thor got his hand munched off and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is that Snorri is fusing a couple of things here. He's definitely using a little bit of Christianity too, to give us a sense of God basically casting Satan into the underworld. That's part of the illusions that he's making here, both to Hel and also to the Midgard serpent. The idea of that serpent being thrown into the deep sea. If we start like really digging into the meanings of words and names and kenningar, euphemisms for the Midgard serpent, for instance, it might actually not be a serpent at all. That's Snorri's interpretation. If you start digging into Völuspá and how it represents Ragnarök, we could also start questioning whether or not there's actually a difference between the Fenris wolf and the Midgard serpent there. And if this Midgard serpent is even really a serpent, that's been questioned by scholars before. The original underlying idea behind Snorri's descriptions might actually just be the wolf in and of itself as sort of like a symbol or image of chaos and destruction that the gods are facing. So there's a lot of like very interesting and very complex background to all of this that Snorri sort of manages to synthesize into the fact that Loki is like his scapegoat, Judas devil kind of figure, right? Mm-hmm. So like it's really interesting to see that he's creating this. He's basically creating sort of like a theology out of this. Where he's probably more just riffing off of like Christian ideas than anything else.
I think that's probably something, the takeaway from this episode, to remember that Snorri is writing from a very Christian perspective.
He is. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not like that these ideas can't fit into our way of thinking about it. But he's definitely taking elements that existed before, and then he's like placing them into like this nice Christian puzzle that he's serving up for us, right?
Yeah, he's got an agenda almost to fit things around. Yeah, so you just have to be careful in how you interpret it, I guess.
I would say so.
Perfect. Let's wrap this one up. I think we're at like an hour and a half, so flies by.
Yeah, they really didn't have so many more questions, but yeah, I'll save them for
next time. Yeah. Halloween.
Yes,
that's it. Is there anything you want to plug? Do you want to give your Instagram a shout out?
Yeah, for the ones who want to follow me and see how I interpret Scandinavian folklore and Norse mythology. You can follow me at Helheimen. I don't know if that is understandable or like.
We'll share the Instagram page anyway, so people will find it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Definitely it was.
Matthias, what about you? Anything you want to plug, shout out, your Instagrams?
Yeah, you can always find me on by my name, Mathias Nordvig, on my Instagram. And yeah, of course, also go to Facebook and give the Nordic Mythology podcast a like, and follow us on Instagram as well. Do you want to plug it all?
I'll do my best to wrap it all up nicely with a bow. So you can obviously follow the podcast Instagram, which is Nordic Mythology Podcast on Instagram. You can follow me personally, which is Daniel_Farrand1, and obviously Horns of Odin at Horns of Odin. If you enjoy the podcast, please take a minute to leave us a 5-star review and a positive rating. Did I get that the right way around? I think so. It really helps people find the podcast. Obviously, if they're unsure whether to download it, they might read a nice review and then download it and give it a listen and give it a try and then like what they hear. You can also support us on Patreon, obviously Patreon/Nordic Mythology Podcast, where we have a bunch of stuff. We have some new stuff coming. Like I say, we're going to be doing merch in January now. I was going to say in the new year then, but we're going to be doing some merch soon. So people on Patreon will get a nice little discount off the first lot as well. So hopefully we'll have its benefits for being on there. And you can watch the episodes or on our YouTube channel, which is just Nordic Mythology Podcast. At the minute, It's just Nordic Mythology Podcast channel. And I think that's it. I think I got everything. I need to make a list. It's getting longer every week. We're gonna have to start splitting it up. You're gonna have to do half the work. You're gonna have to like remember to say half of it.
I'll try.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
No problem. Anytime.